Well, hello, everybody. Thanks very much for joining us. This is the How to Enable Operational Resilience with FactoryStack and Groov EPIC webinar. I am Joe DeLevo with 4 Solutions, and joining me is my friend Renee over at Opto 22. How you doing, Renee?
I'm doing well today. Pleasure to be here. Renee Gamero with Opto 22, and just excited for today. We're going to do a lot of cool stuff.
Awesome. I am partial to the demo. I always love live demos, especially when they go right. But we got some exciting stuff to talk about and show today. So
I
looking forward
love
to it.
hate.
That's
Love
right.
hate. Love live demos.
Awesome. So to get started, I thought we would go through a quick agenda and look at what we're going to be talking about today. Starting off with introductions, we'll just go through real quick who we are, talk about the objective, what are we looking for you folks to get out of the discussion today, and we'll do some intros on 4 Solutions and Opto 22. And then we'll start diving into the topic at hand, which is operational resilience, which is a pretty timely topic for folks who have been following the news, especially in North America. We'll talk about some of the typical obstacles to achieving operational resilience, what some of the challenges are, and then how you can use tools like the Groov family of products and our product FactoryStack and other tools in the ecosystem to help you overcome those obstacles and really be in a place where you can enable operational resilience for your whole business. And then we'll close with a pretty cool demo, a couple of demos, and go through a summary of key points and have it open to Q&A at the end. So that's the plan for today. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So again, I'm Joseph DeLeo, the CTO of 4 Solutions. Been working in the industrial automation industry for about 13 years now, starting off as a system integrator, doing everything from PLC programming, HMI SCADA design, and now we, alongside 4 Solutions, have really transitioned pretty heavily into the cloud and hybrid cloud space, which I'll come back to in a little bit. Renee, how about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Renee Gamero. I'm an electrical engineer by education, and my first job out of college, while I was in college, was with Opto 22, and I was with them for about 12 years since then. We just enjoyed seeing what our applications were doing around the world. So not only am I responsible for the state of Nevada, but also Latin America and Asia. So just being able to see this hardware develop into what it is now has been just a pleasure, and it's given me quite a photo album too. And I just wanted to say a little bit about these two headshots that we have. I noticed that my head's a lot bigger than yours, so that wasn't intentional.
Yeah. I'll have to scale it next time. So
no, I think that's how big it is. So I'm sorry about that. Sorry for all the pixels.
No, I love it. I love it. I was going to say too, we don't have pictures up here, but we do have a couple of friends who are joining us today as well. So for folks who haven't seen the podcasts or the discussions that we've done, this is Geralt the giraffe who sits next to me. He tends to enjoy being on podcasts and webinars. He's very, very stoic and serious, but he also likes to have fun once in a while. And if I squint a little bit, Renee, I think I see you also have a giraffe colleague over there.
A couple of them. I'm following the giraffe motif. So this is well, you were telling me you knew the name of this, Sophie or something. So this is the chew toy that my 2-year-old twins took turns in learning how to bite with. So I thought, as a nod to the Head in the Clouds podcast, I wanted to also show up with one, and I found a second giraffe as well. So they'll be helping me with the demo later today.
That's awesome. Definitely. Thanks for the pitch. Check out the Heads in the Cloud podcast that we do every week or every couple of weeks. We have some special guests on. We just talked to Jeff Winter of Industry 4.0 fame. So that's going to be posted in a little bit. But yeah, so giraffe, tall neck, Head in the Cloud. I just killed the joke. So thanks again, Renee and Giraffe for joining us. So this is what we want you to really get out of this discussion. So we're going to talk about operational resilience, and as engineers by trade, we really like to get practical and go through some details. So we want to be able to provide some very specific examples of how you can use it, how your peers are using it, how other folks in the industry are using it to achieve it. And we're going to talk through some of that today in detail. And so we'll do some real quick company introductions. So I mentioned 4 Solutions. So our tagline, if you will, is manufacturing cloud infrastructure simplified. So we're taking a lot of these concepts that have been familiar to folks in the IT space for a very long time, things like version control, things like hybrid management, things like backups, things like containers and Kubernetes and all these exciting words. And we're really trying to make those approachable to folks in the OT space. People trying to run their manufacturing operations don't have time to worry about the cloud. They want to focus on keeping their plants up and running, and all of the requirements that they have that are unique to these industries, things like being sensitive to latency, not being able to withstand downtime, security implications, local control as well. And so we've built FOIR to do. And that's a big task, and so partnerships are very important to us. And so we are a Opto partner, IoT certified, so that's why we're doing this discussion together with Renee today. Also an AWS partner, and partnering with basically all the cloud vendors at some level to offer their services in a kind of a managed way. And then, of course, the key piece to our stacks products, if you will, is the Ignition platform by Inductive Automation. So we are an official Inductive Automation solution partner. So you'll tend to see Ignition logos and diagrams and product descriptions in a lot of what we do and talk about. And
so just wanted to add there, it's like how I pitch you to people, how I describe you to people is if you want to do a cloud proof of concept, go ahead, log in AWS, try it, send some data back and forth and upload it and everything. But once you're serious, once you have a real project and you want it to be resilient, which is the title of today's webinar, that's when you need to bring 4IR in, because they've thought of this. They thought of what happens when you have an update that not the case. What happens when now you have no one that's responsible for the cloud because it was just kind of a proof of concept getting started. So that's how I describe you to my customers is once you're serious about getting to the cloud, they've already run into the issues and solved them that you haven't even thought of yet. So just wanted to add that.
You looking for a job, Renee? Because I think
Sure.
you're hired. That was a great.
Oh.
I'm gonna talk to Benson. No, that's and I will say that
giraffes. Yes,
we do have giraffes. Yeah, we have cookies. It's great because spinning these things up, and we'll talk a little bit about this. Getting it spun up sometimes is the easy part. The reality is that it's not hands off. Once you have it spun up, there's maintenance, there's upgrades, there's patches, there's the stuff that's not as flashy and exciting necessarily needs to be done and is equally, if not more important, to keep your operations up and running. So we tend to handle that kind of stuff to let you focus on the new and flashy, exciting things that are more project-based and application-based. So our primary service that we talk about is, you can see on the left here, is our managed service FactoryStack. That is an industry agnostic within the manufacturing vertical, at least, managed service for offering OT services, including Ignition in the cloud or in hybrid cloud, which means we get all the fun advantages of the cloud, but we run it on your own premise. So for folks that have data sovereignty, data residency, other kind of security restrictions, you can still take advantage of what the cloud gives you, but have it in your own environment. And then we have a pharmaceutical or a life science flavored version of that, which is called PharmaStack, that's built on the same core technology, but has some enhancements around data integrity, audit trail support, and some of the things that folks in that industry who are subject to audits from organizations like the FDA or the Health Canada or some of the EU regulatory bodies would be interested in and care about. And then we do just services around IT/OT consulting. There's a lot in this space that folks kind of need to know about. We do have an assessment, industrial cloud readiness assessment for companies that might be starting to think about cloud. Maybe they want to start small and use it for backups, or they want to use Azure AD for identity authentication or for central governance. And so we have an assessment that we do that we also offer through our partner AWS. And then we do have our products that we've kind of how 4IR started out a few years ago in partnering with Sepasoft, which is currently the other inductive automation solution partner. So providing some best-in-class modules for providing connectivity to SAP and other ERP and business systems. So that's pretty much our stack of products and services.
I think one thing would be interesting. I know the answer to this, but how fast could you spin up a cloud instance for a customer to show off your capabilities?
Minutes. It takes minutes.
Minutes. And I've seen it done. And I'll be talking with Joe on some proof of concept or some idea, and literally his answer to it is, well, why don't I spin up an instance real quick and we can try it live? And to me, that's just I don't know anyone else that can do that with the security and the encryption and all the features that you bring to the table.
Spin up first, ask questions later, and to your point, Renee.
That's everyone else. Yes, spin it up first and hope for the best.
Like, and critically, what's getting spun up is a platform that aligns with best practices from application vendors, from the cloud providers, and all those kind of things. It's not a toy system. We have real production systems that we spin up very, very quickly. So thanks for that. This is just an example. Final points kind of around the 4IR products at this point, but you look at what FactoryStack and PharmaStack are, and you can see these sort of cluster of services, both products as well as backing services for things like backups and supports and upgrades and security. All of that's under that framework, and all those underpinnings are things that are provided. And we have it either up in a public cloud, your own private instance inside of a private cloud, as well as you can see here on the lower right, the hybrid computing. So again, you can run all of those great services locally instead of in an AWS or Azure instance, as well as other flavors for maybe smaller companies, for example. So if you may have an existing system that already is doing data collection and you just want to be able to pump that up to maybe an enterprise instance that gives you visibility across all your different sites, that's a really good use case for basically using the kind of the cloud only version of FactoryStack. There's a really nice piece in the middle where you may want to do some local control as well. And so the groov EPIC, which Renee will be talking about and we'll be talking about today and showcasing, is a really good tool for that, because it has great support for things like store and forward, which will be a big topic of today. It is a full-blown PLC, PAC, that allows you to provide local control as well as collecting data. And we can integrate our services with that and actually offer that as a part of our managed hardware as a service offering. So the groov EPIC is a really good fit for that. And then you, again, use the cloud for what the cloud does best. And then you can run those services locally for things like latency sensitive control and everything else. So Renee, did you want to add anything about the EPIC in this?
Yes. So I'm hearing you talk just reminds me that both of our companies have a similar problem, in which that we have so many features already caked in to our solutions that it's hard to present it or even compete with others that are coming to the IoT table or to the cloud table for the first time, because they'll raise their hand and say, yes, I can do it. That being able to do it isn't the point. I mean, you spin up a Raspberry Pi talking to the cloud, yeah, you can do it, but will it turn on again? Will it overheat? Will it, in your case, what happens when what happens when you lose your backup? What happens when it's not encrypted? So there's so much experience that goes into your architecture, into our hardware, that it's hard to fit that into an hour, or even, or even sometimes even several in-person visits. So with that, I think all I want to take on that is welcome you to dive in a little more into what FactoryStack is, what 4IR is, what the capabilities of our EPIC are, because it's, again, for some it's an IPC, for some it's an edge controller, for some it's just a PLC, and for sometimes it's completely redundant cloud systems. For others it might well, you could speak to your software better, but there's so many times where questions have come up that I think of like, oh, well, I have no idea how we're going to do that in a cloud environment. And you have a slide for it in both Azure and AWS that shows how that architecture would work. So I welcome more questions, because there's a lot that we're not saying in the interest of time that we have the capability of doing in either a redundant, safe, encrypted, or resilient fashion. So I love this slide. This is my favorite slide of the entire presentation today.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Renee, and well said. And for folks that want a taste of that outside of a webinar format, we do have, there's a blog post that I actually wrote on Opto 22's website about using the groov EPIC as a dream machine for Ignition Edge. So highly recommend reading. We'll send a link out maybe with the recording. So definitely check that out. And that's enough about me and us. So Renee, take it over. Talk about Opto.
Yeah. So Opto 22, 49-year technology, innovated 1974. We started with the solid state relay. So I need to get one of those in my office to show you what that is. But it's basically interconnecting low voltage signals with large motors inside your factory. From that came the serial lines. We're the first to add Ethernet, Wi-Fi, cellular, and always incorporated open protocols. So this is actually a view of our facility in Temecula, California, where everything's made, and we were vertically integrated before it was cool. because we're just technical people. We're an engineering company made for engineers, and that's why when people come to us, they come to us not because they need us to continue their license, or they need us because we've hooked them in with a protocol no one else has, but it's because we solve a technical problem, and we solve usually a problem of they bought a machine from Germany, from the US, from Asia, and now they need the three of them to talk and go into Industry 4.0, where we've solved that issue on a hardware level, where 4IR Solutions has done it on a software level. So that's who we are. And I'll
Awesome.
give it to you.
I was just going to say I've been to your headquarters in Temecula, and it's a great location and a great building and great people inside of it. So awesome.
Most of us.
Most of us, yeah, a couple of you. So this is the topic at hand. So we are talking about operational resilience. So what does that mean? Well, these days the best way to get an answer like this is not to look it up in a dictionary or to Google it, but it's actually to ask ChatGPT. So that's what we've done. As with all things AI related, it's important, I think, to take everything you read, with a grain of salt and check your sources and everything else. But I actually think this does a pretty good job of summarizing some of the key takeaways from this, and I've bolded those there. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but it's really about having the ability to continue delivering a business's critical services and functions during and after disruptive events. And sometimes those events are things that you can control. Sometimes those are things that you can't control. And that's a very large topic. I was at the ARC Industry Forum just a couple of months ago, and this was a pretty hot topic there as well. Again, if you've been following the news, the White House administration in the US put out a cyber briefing recently that talked about resilience and the importance of being resilient and everything that kind of entails. So it's a very hot topic, and it touches a whole bunch of different elements of running your operation. Some of it is technical and technology focused. Some of it is really around having processes in place for business continuity. If you've got we talk about, tribal knowledge on the manufacturing floor all the time. If you have somebody who, retires or gets hit by a bus or something like that, do you have, documented processes? Do you have other folks in your organization who can kind of pick that up and run with that? Is your organization structured where you have a whole bunch of single points of failure, whether those are people, processes, or technology, or are you able to withstand those kind of scenarios? So it's a really big ask. And the other, I think, takeaway from this definition is to say, it's important that you put together a strategy in place that is, somewhat tailored to your company, but that, at least evaluates some of those potential risk areas in your company and figures out what's the approach you want to take to resolving those. Anything around this one, Renee, that you wanted to add?
I think the big key point of is if you're using 4IR software and architectures and Opto 22 hardware, you're already at the head of the class when it comes to operational resilience, because we've put a lot of those pieces already in place. You with your, Kubernetes architecture for all of your software, and us, for example, with the cybersecurity features that are caked in, just those two alone put you, of all the different cybersecurity breaches that I've read of the last couple of years, that they didn't even get close to that point. They were already in miles before that with some of the features that that are avoided because of some of the features we have included. So
totally. You said my favorite word, Kubernetes. So thanks for throwing that out there.
Yeah, it's because of you. I know what that means. You started. You put the bug in my ear that. So now when people bring it up, I know exactly what I don't know and come ask you later.
That sounds great. It's my fault is what you're telling me. So I'll take it. So again, this is kind of a grandiose idea. It sounds great. So what are challenges? We've talked, I think, at a high level about what some of those are, but if we get a little bit more into the weeds, these are some very real challenges, some obstacles to achieving that. Unstable connectivity. So we talk about resilience to, if I'm trying to run my plant and I'm trying to interact with services that are outside the four walls or even within my plant sometimes. I can't tell you how many very, very bad internal controls networks that we've seen because they're not properly segmented, or they've got aging hardware that's not supported, or you're trying to connect, up to the cloud or to a data center and you don't have stable connectivity. Data loss becomes a huge challenge. So that's something that can really get in the way of your operations, your manufacturing operations, and everything else being resilient. Security, we could talk for days about security. How do you make sure that you're not going to be subject to ransomware attacks? And if you get attacked by ransomware that encrypts your data and asks you for some Bitcoin to decrypt it, how do you handle that? Do you have backups in place? Do you have, what if your backups themselves get encrypted by ransomware? What do you do? How is your business able to continue to operate? And again, there's no shortage of stories, unfortunately, in the news about companies that have been subject to this and they haven't had a good response and a good answer to that. So security is one of those things that are incredibly important that can't be understated. And it's really a good area to leverage partners who have experience.
So a third of their
to make that an easier thing for you. And then supply chain challenges. So
and
we see
just
that
running their entire SCADA on the cloud. And like that's what I walked into. Ransom anymore. It's not, it used to be a default, but now they're requiring certain systematic security homework to have been done on your operation. So it's getting tighter and tighter. It's getting tighter and tighter to have a cybersecurity strategy, to have a security strategy, because it's getting too prevalent.
The leniency that you referred to, I think, is no longer there. So this isn't something that you would do as necessarily getting a competitive advantage. This is a necessity for your business to continue to operate and to be competitive because everybody else is doing it, right? And this is one of those reasons where it's good to do security right, because everybody else is doing it. It's important. Well said. And then supply chain challenges. So we've seen so many projects delayed. Again, we can spin up the cloud stuff in minutes, but if you don't have VFDs that are available even, or you don't have your controls hardware available, that'll delay projects, that'll delay upgrades, that'll delay a whole bunch of things. So how do you deal with that? Not to mention the national security concerns around some of that as well. So that's a huge key issue and obstacle. Anything on that one, Renee, you wanted to mention?
I know a ton of projects that are held up exactly by that, by VFDs, by sensors in some cases as well. And they're just sitting there waiting, or IPCs. In fact, that's one of the reasons we were kind of taught, we've never wanted to be in the IPC market. Well, there was no plans for it whatsoever. We're an IO company, but there was such a shortage of IPCs all over the world that the most popular first version of this product was one without any IO whatsoever and being just used in that fashion. So supply chain challenges for others, for us right now, I mean, everyone's having it, but because we're a vertically integrated company, we have all of our resources all in one place, helping that be less of a concern than what our competitors are seeing. And even what I'm seeing now is I'm seeing large mines, factories, utilities coming out of the woodwork and saying, can you supply this? So it's our ability to create it all in one place, and having all of our engineers in one place is just proving a huge advantage for us at this time. And then having you as a partner is only making that much stronger.
I was going to say that comes through as well with the partnership discussions, but being able to reach out to you guys and having you be, local, and having your support staff and your engineering staff and, everybody kind of in the same area. I think there's a lot of value to that. We, of course, are on the opposite spectrum and being a cloud company, remote first, but there's definitely value in that. So awesome. So those are some of the challenges. And again, there's other challenges. These are ones that I think can be let's say, mitigated to some extent with technology and tools like FactoryStack and EPIC. So this is an example of some of the ways in which, looking at FactoryStack as an example, that we can overcome this problem of unstable connectivity. We're actually going to focus on this one quite a bit in the demo coming up shortly. So built into the architecture of the platform, and we showed a high-level version of that earlier, is store and forward and history sync. Make sure that you do not have data loss when you do have spotty connectivity. You can't, maybe when there's 7G and every sensor has a 7G modem on there, we won't have to worry about this. But the reality is, for some time, is that you need to have store and forward of data locally. You have to have some kind of hardware like a groov EPIC that's running on site to do all of that. And that's really about collecting data and pushing that data up. Also critically, if you're going to be doing any kind of control operation, so you're going to be using the groov EPIC or a PLC to do controls, you can't not be able to open and close a valve or start and stop a pump because you lose internet connectivity. So one of the things that's built into the architecture of the platform, this is actually a feature of Ignition specifically, is you can have local fallback control. So if for whatever reason you can't connect to your cloud instance, if that's how you're choosing to run your architecture, you can fall back to running off maybe a smaller, more scaled down project off the groov EPIC or off a local Ignition Edge client. And that's incredibly powerful. And the client you're using to connect, so your web browser, your mobile phone, can be aware of that and say, well, if I can't reach this, I'm going to basically get redirected over somewhere else. And again, we'll show a little bit of this too with the demo coming up. And then kind of the final point is that, I showed this in the other diagram, you don't have to just run all of your OT infrastructure software in the cloud. A lot of folks don't want to do that. There's good reasons to not do that in some cases. So really, I think a good answer for a lot of manufacturing companies is what you call hybrid. So you can have hardware that's running on premise, and for some of these devices, like you look at a groov EPIC or you look at some of the kind of the larger, let's say, rack server devices, those are things that we as a solution partner can actually manage for you. So we'll manage all of the, I'll say Kubernetes again, but we'll manage all the orchestration of your workloads and provide monitoring and support and take care of upgrades for you. So you're just focusing on the applications themselves. And again, not having to worry about losing connectivity to the cloud to do some of these operations is key. So anything, I know we're going to talk about the EPIC in more detail, but I wanted to get your thoughts on this one, Renee.
I was just at a factory in South America just a few weeks ago, in which they're luckily they were putting in a new floor, so a third of their factory was already going through maintenance, but they lost their network connection was so bad, and they were running their entire SCADA on the cloud. Like that's what I walked into. And then so after telling them like, well, you could actually run all that here and serve it here and then have that as a redundant option. I mean, I think we're getting to the point where now unstable connectivity, we're used to it, but at the same time, we're not prepared for it. So we expect the network to go down, but we're still cross our fingers where with our mutual solution that, like we're going to see later, that's we're taking that into account as a primary factor in how we design.
Very well said. Totally agree. I think the answer is going to be, again, somewhere in the middle. You have something on site, but you also don't want to be managing racks of servers. You got, manufacturers of other things to worry about. Security, again, we could talk about this all day, but some of the things that FactoryStack looks at building into that platform via the architecture is best practices. So we like to say we put up guardrails, if you will, into how things are implemented. And all the cloud vendors have their own best practices guides. Ignition has the deployment best practices guide. We've basically taken those as building blocks and baked that into the configuration of the platform. So when you spin up a new FactoryStack instance for you, that it's already aligned with best practices around security. So that level of guarantee in and of itself, I think, is a really big deal. And beyond sort of the architecture, let's say with those best practices, is that we've also made technology decisions that I'll say are very deliberate in order to minimize the attack surface. So using things like containers as opposed to full application VMs that have to have Windows updates and they have to have patching and all these kind of things, we've designed the platform in such a way that minimizes that. So you have read-only containers that are digitally signed, and that's part of the, again, architecture that we could dive into in more detail and talk about all day. So that's a very deliberate, conscious decision we made with security in mind. And then as part of being a managed service, again, all the upgrades, the patching are things that are provided as a part of that subscription. And critically, we have active monitoring in place. So again, folks on the manufacturing floor or in other industries are trying to keep their operations up and running. Maybe every couple of weeks, they're checking for logs to see if somebody logged in when they shouldn't have. Best case scenario, they're getting notifications if somebody's requesting elevated access rights. But the reality is there's a whole lot of admin password logging in going on. Nobody's really looking for those things. The actual mean time to detection of a lot of these ransomware attacks or other let's say infiltrations tends to be a very, very long time before people realize that anything's been going on. So having active monitoring provided as part of that service is a really big deal for peace of mind.
I just found out about that right now. I didn't know you did that. But that makes all the sense in the world.
Awesome. That's big part of the value for sure.
Wow.
And then the last one again is really around the supply chain. So again, we talk about we can spin this up in minutes. We can spin it up in North America. We can spin it up in India. We can spin it up in Europe. We can spin it up in Africa. We can spin it up anywhere that the cloud providers have data centers. That's a really, really incredible thing to be able to do without having to ship servers, internationally and all the lead times and stuff associated with those. And one of the things that we've also done with the architecture is we're very, again, I'll say deliberate about the services that we're adopting from the cloud providers to be, I call it a commodity, but it's commodity in a good way where they're somewhat interchangeable if you think of them as kind of Lego bricks or building blocks. So we can pick and choose the pieces that we want that will minimize the lock-in to the vendor. So if you have, let's say, a vendor that goes out of business, or they change their business plans, or the pricing goes up, we have flexibility into how we can kind of adopt and adapt to that. And by building on some of the open source tools, things like Postgres for the database, gives us some level of portability as well if we do need to change solutions, which we've already had to do as well in the past. So, and then again, we talk about this especially with the groov EPIC and some of the hybrid devices, but they are widely available. So they haven't been impacted quite as much by some of the supply chain challenges that we've seen from some of the big, let's say, server-based companies in that space.
Accurate. But yeah, no, we're happy about. Actually, we're kind of, I would say we're a little embarrassed by that. But our customers are the ones that tell us that that's not. The long story short, we used to have 30 days worth of inventory on our shelves, 30 days worth of in-work parts, and 30 days worth of raw materials. Now, of course, COVID came and then just made us change. We'd love to get back to that, but it's just such a challenging time. And then so when we put our lead times up for the EPIC and Rio, anywhere between 6 to 10 weeks, depending on what the part that is, we're honestly, I'm a little embarrassed from our point of view. But when our customers tell us what our competitors are looking at, in some cases, especially for drives, like 24 months, in some case, 18 months, a year, we're definitely happy about where we are, but only when we compare ourselves. But we're definitely one day we'll be back to the great days.
We will be back, and it is all relative to your point. So, and I think you guys are doing a great job with it. And I'd say, we brought up these three, kind of ways of, these three obstacles and how we're overcoming them. I think Opto 22 is doing all of those, but I know the one that I think is the biggest compliments to what it is that we're doing, and probably the one that requires the most discussion, really is security. So I thought that you talk about that with regards to the EPIC family.
Yeah,
the groov
thank
family.
you. Yeah, thank you for that. And it's really the entire groov family. I'm talking about the EPIC today, but also for the Rio. And I think the best example to give for that is we have billion-dollar multinationals coming to us and saying, well, we're going to audit you to put on our OT network. And usually the customers that we have and the prospects we have say, this is going to take forever. They send us an Excel sheet. It's 100 pages long, where we have to answer all these cybersecurity questions. And then usually what we found is it usually surrounds on 4 of the built-in features that we have. One is a built-in firewall, where you can literally go in, create, delete, modify how different ports are being used, which ones are open. You can completely close it and make an EPIC an entirely outbound device. The other is encryption. Then it's user management that you could even include into an Active Directory scenario using LDAP, for example. And lastly, that it's a VPN client built in. Now, here's where we run into the problem again of others say, oh, well, we can do that. Oh, it's like, okay, so we can have this architecture. Fantastic. Where's your firewall? Well, I'm going to have to buy that. Well, where's your certificate management? Well, that'll be running on a PC next to it. And what we have is it's storing information. There's no PC in this diagram. It is the EPIC. It is the EPIC that's talking directly to any PLC that's out. It's just to the internet that it's lost its connection. And then once we plug this back in, we're going to see that it will set PLCs. And so talking about cybersecurity, about these 4 points, we also, what we're using today for MQTT also can set it up in a purely outbound MQTT configuration. So going through these 4 configurations, there's another thing too. With us, you don't need any special software. You need to download it, a key, a license. This is literally a web page that's being served in every EPIC and Rio controller. So here's where you would point and click, say what ports are available, who's allowed, who's denied, and you have a choice of 2 copper ports. Both will be unplugging today live. wireless LAN through a USB key, and as well as the VPN tunnel. So you just point and click and set that up. And we want to make it easy. Imagine having to do that with a firewall you'd buy third party, or even worse with TLS and SSL certificates. You can set up the SSL certificate for this as a server, or you can have it, or you can have the the certificate done as a client, or where you're communicating to other devices. So fully encrypted communication. And we've even talked to huge cyber security, OT cybersecurity companies, and they're like, you encrypt at the OT level? Like, who does that? Well, we do. And and here's how easy you can do it. And the last being the third or the fourth being user management. Like I said, you can create your own users. So I could create Joe 4IR master user, and I can give Renee and the giraffe here just view access to one of the to one of a few of the tags. So that's how I can limit it, or I can go full Active Directory and then let the IT department have at it with this device. And lastly, of course, VPN client. Now, VPN client, it supports OpenVPN and just connecting directly to it. So those four features are really those four built-in features are what, after we've submitted those 100 pages and we get on the phone with IT department more than twice now, we have gotten the IT stamp of approval of billion-dollar multinationals over the phone, to where the people that we're working with inside the organizations are telling us each time that's never happened before. So that just tells me, just in the same way 4IR has done their homework on how to maintain a resilient cloud environment and maintain it through backups, encryption, just make it always available. We've done our homework on the hardware side, knowing how to lock this thing down and how to do it easily to be able to present that to anyone who's concerned.
I don't think sorry, Renee, I was going to just echo, and I don't think the value of those four statements can really be understated, and they are great. And it actually ends up making, you know, the architecture for the demo that will show somewhat boring, but boring in a good way, because not many people there. We're going EPIC to cloud, and it's a best practice architecture that's taking security into accounts via VPNs and TLS encryption and everything else up on only MQTT, which you're showcasing. So that's huge, and it's something that not many folks, especially at the hardware level, to your point, in the OT space, get right.
Yeah, and we try to make it easy because, you know, in the OT space, we don't know about certificates. I know enough about certificates to encrypt things. Ask me anything beyond that, I couldn't help you.
Totally. No, very, very well said. And I think we appreciate everybody, for holding on and listening to us talk. So we wanted to get into a live action demo here. So crack your knuckles, Renee, get ready. This is the architecture. And we'll kind of talk through what this is, and I think you're gonna show it and go through some more details. But here is our groov EPIC that's sitting right there over Renee's shoulder, and he's got a temperature transmitter that's recording temperature. And then we've got a couple of clients. There's a phone and a laptop there, which will be looking at the groov view screen, which is basically going to show a trend of that temperature data. He's got it right up there. And then up in the cloud, we have a private instance of FactoryStack for this demo that we spun up. And inside of there are a number of things, but at the application level, we basically have Ignition, and we have a timescale DB time series optimized database running on top of Postgres. So what we're actually doing is we've got data that's being collected, and then we're using MQTT along with store and forward to push that data up into the cloud, and then it's being historized in a time series database. And this is with everything up and running and working. And we're going to show what happens when you literally go ahead and pull the plug. So Renee, take it away.
So speaking of pull the plug, these are some nice images I found online here of what we're going to do. And this is basically what we're going to do. And in here I have two Opto 22 mugs. This one has hot water, and this one has ice water. And this is going to help us as we do our test with the temperature transmitter. So here's the first step that we're going to take. So here's the architecture inside my office. So we have the EPIC that's over my shoulder, located here, and it has two Ethernet connections, one to a local network that I have connecting to this same laptop, and the other that's connected to my router, to just my home Wi-Fi router, that's sending that information over to FactoryStack in the cloud. So we're gonna cut this cable. Well, not cut it, but I'm gonna unplug this cable from the EPIC. So what is that going to do? When this connection is lost, you're going to start to see this flattening out, because of course this is on the cloud and it's not receiving the MQTT data. So what our EPIC is doing is it's storing information and storing, and there'll be no change at the local network because we're still connected to it locally. It's just to the internet that it's lost its connection. And then once we plug this back in, we're going to see that it will send the stored data because this will resynchronize and backfill, and this will never see any blip in any of that operation. So why don't we go ahead and do that? And so this is our factory stack, and this is our HMI. So you're able to see those. This is the local HMI trend, and this is the factory stack. We have hot water and cold water. So why don't we get that started? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in the hot water. And as it starts to go up, then that's when I'm going to pull the plug. Okay, hold on. Too fast, too fast. I need an assistant. See if good. So we're going to put it in hot. We're going to switch it, and we're going to put it in cold then. So we can start to see the local HMI on top start to drop, even out, and go down. So we have one of the Ethernet connections off. So now what we're going to do is we're going to plug this back into the internet. Back into the internet, and what we're going to see here is we're going to see that it's going to drop down and it's going to start to backfill all that data.
So that happened pretty quickly, but you can see is that it basically pulls in the real-time value right away as soon as connectivity is reestablished, and then it will backfill the history. So it happens really fast, which is a good thing.
I saw that was pretty neat, and that was good. And you know, that's not the entire demo. So I wanted to really kind of take it one step further so you see what's happening here. This time we're gonna pause for a lot longer time, and we're gonna really create some heat and some cold here. So what we're gonna do we're gonna pull both cables out of the EPIC controller. So we're gonna pull the connection out to the internet as well as our local connection. So we're gonna see, when we do that, we're gonna see this lose the connection, flatten out, get an error. This will just keep storing information. And if you can see it from there, you'll never see this change at all, because this is just sitting here doing the same trending that's happening there, and it'll lose the connection. And then we're going to slowly put back one connection, the local one. So we'll see that the local HMI starts to communicate. And then we're going to wait a while and keep going hot and cold until this goes back to normal. So why don't we go ahead and do that now? So here we have it. Let's pull both cables. And let's start heating and cooling. So I don't know if you can see them here. This is heat. And you can already see there that that's, if you're able to see the resolution on the screen, you'll start to see it heat up, cool off, heat up. So we're doing some heat. You can hear the ice in there.
So worth highlighting, and again, it's, if you see it on the screen on the device itself, is that we are storing data both for displaying on the local HMI as well as the one up in the cloud. So when this comes back up, we'll have no data loss on either system.
So what are we using on this? We're using MQTT, but it has to be Sparkplug-B. So
it is Sparkplug-B. So for folks that may or may not know, MQTT is a very efficient means of transmitting data. CirrusLink did a webinar on it yesterday, and they've also been really the innovators in this space for a long time. One of the things that Sparkplug adds on top of it is basically a definition of payload. And so it provides some conventions, if you will, to how you can structure your MQTT messages to give you all sorts of really nice guarantees. And one of the nice things that makes this possible is that you can basically have historical data. So you're time stamping over your data. So when it gets sent over, you know you're not just getting an instantaneous data point, you're getting data point from potentially sometime in the past. And then for client applications that are subscribing, that are Sparkplug aware, if you will, or Sparkplug supported, they will be able to fill in those data points into the historian. So in our case, up in the cloud database, those data points are getting stored as they come in. And so it's really, for this to work, it kind of requires a what's called a broker, which is basically an MQTT server that sits there in the middle. In our case, that server is actually running as a module. It's the MQTT distributor module inside of Ignition. And then there is a MQTT client that runs natively on the groov EPIC that is also supporting store and forward locally, and then is connected up to that broker and is pushing data. And then finally, the third piece of the puzzle is that there's another module running on that same Ignition cloud server called MQTT Engine that is taking those Sparkplug messages and transmitting them back to Ignition tags, which is where the historian connection to the database is configured. So there's a couple of different pieces in there, but again, in terms of applications and servers and hardware, it's actually quite simple. But that's a gist of how it works under the hood.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be the Opto 22 native implementation. If you're running Ignition Edge on it, that's a capability you can do it too. So there's several ways to do it. We're just honestly showing the way that's easiest for me to configure for the sake of this demo. So let's start plugging things back in, and we're going to do it in the order of plugging in the local area network first. So I don't know if you can see that, Joe, but you'll see all the squiggles there that are happening. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to see the top HMI here. That exclamation point's going to go away. Okay, and there's our data. But we're still not connected to the internet. So now we're going to connect this to the internet. And as Joe indicated, and that's what I see every time, it's going to get the real-time data first and then start backfilling in. So there it is, plugged in, and you'll see that all of the waveforms now are going to start looking exactly alike. So hit that.
So
Here
you
we
saw
go.
it jump to the current real time, and now it's filling in, and now it's backfilling the old data. Pretty cool.
So, and one thing, been doing this for so long, I remember when this was the hardest part to do about any control application. We could have an entire factory running, and then we would get a tech support call saying, how do I get essentially back then store and forward working? And you had to create all of these different programs in order to do that. And now it's out of the box, point and click configure with our companies doing that together. So.
Totally agreed. And we're doing this with a single data point. Of course, the value of MQTT is being able to do this at scale. So picture not one data point, picture a whole bunch of data points. And now picture you've got a groov EPIC or one or more at all of your different sites. And we're aggregating data all up into, let's say, a single Ignition gateway or a single historian that's historizing all of this. MQTT is a great protocol and Sparkplug a great payload definition and standard in the middle there that makes all this really possible. But yeah, it's really never gets old.
See a curve smoothing out too, so it looks like it's getting in there and it's filling in more and more data as it comes along. So that's cool to see. I never did the demo for that long before.
Yeah, I think the interpolation settings are maybe a little bit different between the groov view application and the Ignition application, but yeah, we could probably smoothen that out. But the data points are the same. You can tell it's not. In the past I've done these with a simulated sine wave, and then you know, well, I already know what a sine wave looks like.
Yeah,
exactly. It's showing that it's real data coming in. So awesome.
So with that was the end of that demo. So we did it. Good job, team. Oh, and by the way, in the entire time we've had that capability, like I said, it's just a web server, so anybody you give access to it can look at it live.
That's right. Awesome. That's great. So this is just summarizing a couple of the key points. Again, defining operational resilience, and it's all about continuing to deliver those business services and functions when you have a disruptive events, whether it's internal or external. Unstable connectivity, security, and supply chain challenges. Those are the three of the common obstacles that you'll tend to see when you're trying to achieve operational resilience with your own company. And then we showcase a demo, but really it's all about leveraging your partners and the technology solutions that they put in place to help you overcome your challenges, and again, executing those as part of a business strategy that aligns with your business's goals. So partners like Opto 22 and ourselves are here to help.
Always, yeah. Answer any questions that you have, either now or later or through a recording. We're going to put our contact information there.
Yep. We're right on time. We got about 10 minutes left. If you wanted to, the next slide is just really to do Q&A. So feel free to submit your questions there in the chat. And as we have time, we will go ahead and get to those. I see one question in here, which I think I know who this one's from, but it's what's a Kubernetes?
That's you. I'm not answering that one. That's a you question.
That's
question.
That's a little, yeah, it might be a little tongue in cheek, given the asker, but for folks who don't know, because it is actually one of the enabling technologies that makes what we're talking about possible. It allows you to take a concept like containers, which is a nice way of, packaging up applications with some really nice guarantees around running those applications in a standard way across environments. And it extends that concept to running across multiple hosts, which could mean servers or virtual machines or anything else. So it handles the scheduling. It'll basically do health monitoring of these applications. It'll allow you to move those between servers if there's problems. So it's a really smart governance and maintenance layer. And it's really a ubiquitous standard in the OT world. And we're only now starting to see companies that are really taking advantage of it within the manufacturing space. But it's what it enables you to do is really incredible. And I think, let's say manufacturing and some of the, the industrial industries have tended to be in the past a little bit more conservative with adopting new technologies. If it's always, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Definitely, I think the last few years with the pandemic and everything else led to companies as they're going on these digital transformation journeys to start exploring outside of the box and their own four walls. And what's nice about technologies like Docker, like containers, like Kubernetes, is that they are mature products and ecosystems in and of themselves. So they're new to manufacturing, they're new to the industrial space, but they're not new to the IT world and the ecosystem at large. So we're taking kind of the best in breed products and tools and practices that have kind of evolved in this space and tailoring it to manufacturing and industrial, which has their own unique requirements and restrictions, as you very well know as well, Renee.
Yeah. Now, I don't think I mentioned to you, but I ran across my first company in China. Look, most of the all four of the heads were educated in, I think, University of Illinois or something, but they were in Shanghai. So they create an entire IT type of surface for the IT services for the OT space, and of course going after private companies. But it's an all Kubernetes implementation. So for that, knowing you really helped me to be able to talk brass tacks with them already, jumping meetings ahead in how to engage their clients into digital transformation. So, I mean, I'm starting to hear it from all sides. So now that I think several people here might have heard it for the first time or second time, it's not going to get any more scarce.
It will definitely not be the last time you hear it, and there will be a lot more companies that are, they're already using it, and they're starting to talk about it at some of the other, industrial events as well, which is exciting for us. And I think, again, really great technology to take a look at. So we had another question come in, and this one will be for you, Renee.
Okay.
This is from Dallas. Is having two VPNs configured normal? We use a standalone VPN device for remote access, but also have an EPIC installed. Should we be using the EPIC VPN connection?
That's I need to know more. I need to, like, for just that one scenario, I'm not sure. For example, today we were having a talk. Within engineering and a couple of others in which, like, could you add another Ethernet connection to this unit through USB? The short answer is yes. The long answer is yes and good luck. And why are people wanting to do this? And because several people are trying to segment their network, zone out their networks, do it. And what came out, and by the way, I'm not sure if this answer will be relevant to this person, but once you get to a certain level, you're going to start to need to look at VLANs, and that's something that you're going to need someone that knows about that capability. Could you use the Opto as your VPN for your entire OT industrial application? Absolutely. One step further, could you use it to protect the weak PLCs? And by weak PLCs, I mean weak cybersecurity, weak Industry 3.0 PLCs you have scattered throughout your facility? Absolutely. In fact, we've even built in something we didn't talk about, port forwarding into this. So you can talk to 500 different machines running a PLC that's super old, that's all serial, and use this as your VPN client to be able to now connect to those PLCs. And as if I'm sitting here in Las Vegas, them sitting in Dallas, the same thing as me spinning up my proprietary software for that PLC vendor as if I were there in Dallas plugging it in. So short answer is I'm not sure what the architecture is. I'd be happy to look at it, but you can use this as your one point in to your entire OT space.
For sure. And I'll say, from our experience, I think it tends to be a bit of an either or. So, and it kind of depends on what the requirements are from the folks who are managing your internet connection. So for example, we've got some customers where we're spinning up an IPsec tunnel. That obviously involves more interfacing with the IT folks on the plant floor. The managed services we're using inside the cloud to provide the VPN endpoints support IPsec, they support OpenVPN. So if you've got a corporate requirement to basically go through and set up your VPN connection there on a device like a Cisco router, or I think in your case, Dallas, a dedicated VPN device, that's one approach. The other approach, which is great, and we install this quite a bit, is we just install the groov EPIC and we use the onboard OpenVPN client. So in my experience, it tends to be either or, depending on who has jurisdiction over the network security. So you'd probably pick one or the other, but it's great to have the option for sure. Awesome. We got time, I think, for maybe one more question. And otherwise, like Renee said, we're happy to follow up offline with anything that comes either during the session or afterwards. You'll have our contact information. And again, we will send out a question that always comes up is, will you get the recording? We will send out the recording as well as probably a number of clips. So if there's nothing else, which I don't see anything else at the moment, Renee, it's been fun. Any final thoughts or comments?
Not that I can think of. I'd say I'd say the easiest thing is try it. Call us. We could, like you said, you could spin up an instance. Anyone can spin us an instance and give us a chance to spin up an instance and show you how easy it is to not only to do that, but then also everything that comes behind it with this just a fully managed cloud environment that YR provides.
Totally. Awesome. Well said, Renee. Well, thanks again for joining me on this discussion, and thanks to everybody who stuck around or who's watching this after the recording's been posted. So great talking with you all, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Great. Good one, everyone.
Bye-bye.